I was having dinner with a friend last week, one of those brilliant, hyper-intellectual types who spends his days mapping out the ethical collapse of modern society. He was on a roll, leaning across the table, his voice dropping into that low, urgent register people use when they're talking about the end of the world. He told me that anyone living a comfortable life right now is essentially complicit in a grand injustice. To him, the fact that we can sit in a climate-controlled room and worry about our weekend plans while automation and inequality reshape the globe isn't just a privilege, it's a moral failure. He looked at the waiter, a man who seemed perfectly focused on the simple task of balancing a tray, and whispered, "See, that's the tragedy. He's been anesthetized by convenience. He's lost his agency." It was a heavy, compelling argument, the kind that makes you feel a sudden, sharp guilt for enjoying your meal. My friend painted a picture of a world that was hollowed out, where our safety was just a mask for apathy. He wanted a revolution, a world where every soul was a soldier for justice or a titan of industry. But then something small happened. The restaurant's ordering system glitched, a tiny digital hiccup in the infrastructure. Within seconds, a technician appeared from a back room, quiet, unassuming, wearing a faded utility belt. He didn't look like a hero. He didn't look like he was carrying the weight of the world. He just opened a panel, flipped a few switches with practiced competence, and the lights stayed on. The system held. My friend didn't even notice. He was already back on his phone, using a high-speed network to summon a rideshare, perfectly confident that a car would appear within 3 minutes to take him to a safe dry bed. He was offended by the moral void of modern comfort. Yet he was betting his entire life on the fact that thousands of ordinary people would keep doing their unimportant jobs with quiet reliability. It made me wonder, when did we decide that a functioning civilization is a sign of failure? Why have we started to believe that unless your life is a constant state of crisis or historical significance, it isn't worth living? We've become obsessed with a version of progress that demands everyone be a protagonist, but in doing so, we might be destroying the very thing we've spent centuries trying to build. The right to just be okay.
That story, that really just crystallizes the whole tension, doesn't it?
It really does.
You have this high moral critique on one side. Comfort is complicity. Stability is just hiding some profound injustice.
Right.
And then on the other, you have the undeniable practical reality, the fact that functioning, stable systems are absolutely essential. And they're built and maintained by the quiet competence of that technician.
The person no one notices until something breaks.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to get into the sources that provide a kind of ethical defense of that stability of technology and the right to an ordinary life.
I think we have to.
We need to contrast the global perspectives on where human dignity actually resides in this age of, hyper-automation and just overwhelming information. Is dignity only found in that perpetual struggle? Or does it thrive best when systems reliably free us from the survival grind?
It feels like it's about calibrating our moral compass. And I think we have to start very deliberately with the threat.
The immediate threat, yeah.
The immense structural threat that automation poses, because that is the primary fuel for the kind of ethical anxiety my friend was feeling.
Right.
We're looking at developing economies in Southeast Asia specifically, where the scale of this coming disruption it's almost unimaginable.
Well, if you look at the manufacturing and production sector, which is really the key engine of employment across Southeast Asia, the potential for displacement is just staggering.
It's staggering.
The International Labor Organization published some research focusing on the ASEAN 5. So that's Cambodia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam.
The big players in the region.
Exactly. And their analysis shows that these 5 major economies, they face an overall risk of 56% of employment being automated within the next 2 decades.
56%.
56. This isn't theoretical, This is a quantified near-future crisis point.
That is not a soft landing. That's more than half the existing jobs, supporting millions of families just vulnerable to being structurally eliminated in a pretty short period.
And it gets worse when you drill down.
So what does this look like on the ground, say, in a major industrial country like Thailand?
Well, when you focus on countries that are heavily reliant on manufacturing, the concentration of that risk becomes acute. For Thailand, the material we looked at indicates a striking 73% of its entire manufacturing workforce is at high risk of being automated.
73%. That's almost 3 out of every 4 jobs.
It is. And it's because that sector is just characterized by repetitive, standardized tasks. It's precisely the sort of work that robotics and sophisticated machine learning can do cheaper and, frankly, more efficiently than a person.
And the businesses have to compete.
They do. These small and medium enterprises, they're the backbone of employment there, but they have to prioritize efficiency to stay globally competitive. And that translates directly to replacing their low-skilled workers.
And of course, the jobs that are left over, the new ones created by all this automation, they require completely different skills.
That's the crux of it.
Which creates this profound skills gap, and it just slams the most vulnerable people first.
Absolutely. The automation wave, it targets low-skilled, low-wage jobs, so it makes the lesser-educated demographics the most severely impacted.
And we have hard data on that.
We do. We see stark evidence of this in Vietnam. Workers who have only a primary school education are 3 times more likely to have their jobs automated compared to someone who managed to get a secondary or vocational degree.
3 times more likely.
The new jobs that are created, things like, machine maintenance, data analytics, process management, they all require tertiary education or very specialized technical training. The displaced worker, they lack the resources, the time, and the immediate access to bridge that gap.
So this demographic vulnerability, it turns what looks like an economic statistic into a real humanitarian concern. I mean, if these economic structures collapse, what are the cascading social consequences that the sources point to? Because mass displacement like that isn't happening in a vacuum.
No, it isn't. And if that transition fails, the sources highlight a really dire potential outcome. Severe exploitation. A report from Verisk Maplecroft explicitly warns that displaced workers, especially those without Social Security or the means to relocate or reskill, will be forced to compete for a rapidly shrinking supply of low-paid, low-skilled work.
So it's a race to the bottom.
A race to the bottom that could lead to, as they project, a surge in unemployment that makes people much more vulnerable to trafficking and, in some cases, outright slavery. When the fundamental structure that supports your livelihood collapses, human desperation creates the perfect conditions for exploitation.
Okay, so that is the crisis. We have to acknowledge that. It's immediate. It's a terrifying risk.
Right.
But this brings us directly to the paradox, which is really the heart of our discussion today.
Right.
That automation in these exact same contexts can also be a form of liberation.
Yes.
It represents the role of technology in decoupling human dignity from just survival-based labor.
And that forces us to ask a really fundamental question. Is suffering a prerequisite for dignity? The modern critique, like from your friend, often glamorizes the struggle. It implies that unless work is hard, unless it's physically taxing, meaningfulness is somehow lost.
But let's ground this. We should look at a real-world example of a worker who actually experienced this radical shift.
Let's do that.
We have the story of Aranya. She worked in a huge, humming textile hub just outside Bangkok. And for years, her entire existence was defined by what we could only call the survival grind.
Just day in, day out repetition.
16-hour days filled with repetitive, back-breaking labor, moving these heavy bolts of fabric, sorting, pressing. Her identity was completely consumed by the need for physical output, just to earn a few dollars to keep her family housed and fed. Dignity wasn't even in the equation. Her worth was purely transactional, measured by how long her body could endure the coercion of that factory floor.
It's so important to just linger on that psychological state for a moment.
It is.
When your worth is solely tied to your physical endurance in a repetitive, dangerous task, you are, in effect, reduced to a cog in a machine. There's no agency there, only compliance. Aranya's time, her physical well-being, it was all owned by the urgency of survival.
And then the shift happened. The factory integrated advanced automated cutting and sorting systems, machines that could handle the heaviest, most monotonous tasks with incredible speed and precision.
And crucially, Aranya wasn't discarded.
No, she was trained. She was moved from the physical line to a control room to oversee the interface, to manage the data flow, and only step in when exceptions came up.
The change in her daily reality it's just transformative.
Completely.
Her physical suffering was alleviated. This transition gave her what the source material calls the gift of time.
The gift of time.
It liberated her hands, her attention. The sources say that with her evenings now free from absolute exhaustion, she began teaching traditional Thai weaving to children in her neighborhood, a craft she had loved for a long time but could never pursue when she was trapped in that survival grind.
Her new dignity is just.
Yeah.
It's self-evident, right? It's no longer derived from physical endurance. It's from technical oversight. And I think more importantly, from her ability to choose how she spends her energy outside of work.
Yes.
She transformed from a human cog into an empowered supervisor who also contributes culturally to her community.
And this demonstrates that dignity can become a secure baseline when it is detached from the coercion of physical endurance just for mere survival.
Her job became cognitive.
Exactly. Supervision, problem solving, quality control. A completely different definition of meaningful contribution than what consumed her before. The machine took over the suffering, not the meaning.
So the crucial takeaway here, then, is that automation itself is morally neutral. It's not inherently dehumanizing.
Not at all.
The outcome, exploitation, or liberation, it's entirely determined by the policy and the management of that transition.
Exactly. And because the risk of failure is so high, resulting in displacement, potential trafficking governments are forced to choose these high-stakes policy responses. And we're seeing a split in philosophies emerge across the region.
Right. We identified two really distinct policy paths. Indonesia, for instance, they lean toward a kind of compensatory social safety net.
That's right. Indonesia proposed implementing a universal basic income, or UBI.
UBI.
The philosophy behind this is to alleviate the immediate financial stress caused by widespread and rapid job loss. UBI acts as a social cushion, right? It provides a minimum standard of living during this massive economic restructuring.
It gives people breathing room.
It allows people to survive and maybe pursue reskilling on their own timeline without being forced into some exploitative situation.
Okay, so UBI provides a floor, but it feels like a passive approach to workforce relevance. It doesn't actively address the root cause, the skills mismatch, or drive investment in new sectors.
That is a critical distinction. The Thai approach is much more interventionist. It's focused on structural market change. The government of Thailand approved substantial tax incentives designed specifically to boost automation adoption within their domestic industries.
Now, a critic, like my friend, would immediately jump in and say, wait, you're paying companies to replace people? That seems completely counterintuitive to job protection.
It is a high-stakes gamble, as you say. The rationale is strategic. The tax breaks are intended to attract foreign direct investment. And with that investment comes the mandate for modern technology.
I see.
The goal is that these foreign investors will, in turn, train Thai workers in the new, higher-skilled maintenance, repair, and operational roles that you need to run these advanced automated factories.
So they're trying to force the creation of the supply of new jobs?
Yes, they're using the tax incentive to do it. They're betting that the increased efficiency in foreign capital will offset the initial job losses.
But a high-stakes gamble suggests a massive risk. What are the specific conditions where this gamble fails? What happens if the investors just take the tax break, maximize automation, but don't adequately invest in training local Thai workers?
The consequence is an accelerated, high-efficiency unemployment crisis.
Right.
If the educational infrastructure and the training pipeline don't keep pace with the speed of automation, if the investors satisfy the letter of the law but not the spirit of the upskilling mandate, then displacement happens much faster than reintegration.
So the risk is huge.
Which is why the central necessity, regardless of which policy you choose, remains this relentless investment in education and training. The transition must support workers in acquiring those new technical and cognitive skills.
That sets the stage perfectly for our next section. The ambition isn't just about mitigating a crisis. It's about actively raising the minimum floor of human security.
Yes.
And if we move from the challenges of displacement to the active engineering of trust and comfort, we land squarely in Singapore's Smart Nation initiative.
And here we shift from an approach driven by crisis management to one driven by strategic long-term governance. Stability here isn't seen as an inert state. It's an actively engineered form of progress.
Engineered progress, I like that.
We're examining how technological advancement is used not just for economic gain, but to improve the fundamental baseline of human security and social stability, even in the context of persistent wealth inequality.
That distinction, stability as a form of engineered progress, is so crucial. I remember reading the narrative of Zul, a delivery writer in Kuala Lumpur.
A city with incredible contrast.
Right, you see spectacular wealth right next to significant poverty. It's easy to dismiss these Asian metropolises as just unequal. But Zul talked about the infrastructure. Despite not being wealthy, he had access to reliable logistics apps, subsidized public transport that actually runs on time, and secure mobile banking.
Zul's perspective really challenges that pure narrative of despair. He is staring at massive wealth inequality, yet the city's integrated digital and physical infrastructure gives him a level of predictability and human security that was previously reserved only for the elite.
Predictability.
He can rely on the system to function. His personal risk is lower because the ground beneath him is fundamentally solid. That is the definition of stability being a form of justice.
It allows for planning.
It allows for planning, it reduces stress, it increases personal agency, regardless of your income bracket.
And that engineered stability is the very objective of Singapore's Smart Nation vision. After 10 years of focusing on building digital capability in what they call SN 1.0, they're now moving to Smart Nation 2.0.
And it has 3 explicitly human-centered goals: trust, growth, and community. This is about building better, meaningful, and fulfilled lives. It's moving beyond mere efficiency.
It's a major philosophical shift.
It's a recognition that technology is only as valuable as the resilience and the inclusivity of the system it creates. They have the foundational achievements of SN 1.0, ranking first globally for digital inclusion, 99% of government services online, a digital economy contributing almost 18% to GDP. But now they're focusing on securing the system.
Okay, let's start with the cornerstone then, trust. This means ensuring resilience and safety. Because if the system fails, if the technician doesn't keep the lights on, the entire social contract built on that predictability just collapses.
And the sources highlight that securing this foundation is an ongoing battle. It's against both digital and physical threats.
It's not just hackers.
No. We saw 2 major disruptions recently. The 2024 global incident caused by a flawed software update from a major cybersecurity firm that showed just how fragile our interdependence is.
I remember that.
But even more telling was the 2023 cooling system failure in a local data center that caused a significant 4-hour banking disruption. That wasn't a cyber attack, it was a physical hazard, a plumbing problem, essentially.
So their policy response has to address both the bits and the bricks, so to speak. How are they codifying this resilience legally?
They're enhancing their legal framework significantly. The 2024 Cybersecurity Act was strengthened to protect critical information infrastructure. But the major new step is the planned 2025 Digital Infrastructure Act.
What's different about that?
This law is crucial because it goes beyond typical cyber risks. It explicitly aims to secure essential services cloud providers, data centers, banking platforms against physical failures, technical misconfigurations, and natural hazards like fires or the cooling failures we just discussed. They are literally legislating against the technician failing his job.
That's a fascinating level of governance. And they aren't waiting for the threat to arrive. They're proactively addressing future sort of existential threats.
Like the specter of quantum computing.
Exactly.
That's right. The quantum threat is an existential crisis for current digital trust. If large-scale quantum computers become viable, they could break the encryption methods, like RSA, that currently secure everything.
All global financial transactions, state secrets, our data.
All of it. To combat this, Singapore launched the National Quantum Safe Network Plus back in 2023.
So how does a network like that actually work? What's the tangible goal?
Well, the network supports major organizations and network operators in deploying quantum-resistant cryptography. This is often done through techniques like quantum key distribution, or QKD, or post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. The goal is to replace or upgrade their current systems with networks that are mathematically secure against these future quantum attacks.
So it's future-proofing the data.
It's ensuring critical long-term data medical records. National security info remains protected for decades to come.
Okay, so beyond these huge infrastructure mega threats, trust is also eroded every single day by the most pervasive threat we all face, scams and online harms.
Yes.
What is their multi-layered defense strategy there?
It's a really holistic approach. It involves operational, systemic, and technological countermeasures. Operationally, the police force established the Anti-Scam Command, which is all about speed. In 2023 alone, they recovered over 100 million Singapore dollars lost to scams, and they froze over 19,600 tainted bank accounts. This swift intervention is designed to immediately limit the financial damage and disrupt the scammers' operations.
And the speed is key, because once that money moves, it's often just gone. What about the systemic defenses, the ones that target the distribution mechanism itself?
The most effective systemic defense has been the mandatory registration through the SMS Sender ID Registry.
Ah, right.
By forcing organizations to register their SMS identification, they made it far easier to filter out illicit or spoofed messages. This one measure resulted in a remarkable 70% reduction in scam cases involving SMCs in the first 3 months.
70% is a huge drop.
It is. And on top of that, their telcos blocked over 390 million potential scam calls in 2023. These aren't just one-off fixes, they are changes to the underlying telecommunications architecture.
I'm particularly interested in the technological tools they're deploying. You mentioned the Recursive Machine Learning Site Evaluator, or RMSE. How does that work? What makes it more effective than just a standard filter?
The RMSE, developed by their government technology agency, is a sophisticated system designed to evaluate suspicious websites almost instantaneously. The recursive part means it doesn't just evaluate the front page.
It digs deeper.
It rapidly and repeatedly checks the site's entire network footprint, including redirects and embedded content, to determine its malicious intent. It can evaluate hundreds of thousands of sites daily in just 2 to 3 seconds with greater than 90% accuracy.
Which allows for swift disruption.
Before the site can cause widespread harm.
So it's fighting information speed with algorithmic speed. But what about the trade-off here? Building systems this effective against fraud must centralize a massive amount of power and data collection. Does the source material address that tension between engineered safety and personal privacy?
That is a really important question of trade-off, and it's inherent in any Smart Nation initiative. While the sources do emphasize robust legal frameworks and transparency protocols, the reliance on digital ID systems, AI monitoring like RMSE, and real-time intervention by agencies like the Anti-Scam Command. It does mean a necessary sacrifice of some degree of anonymity and individual data control for collective security.
A necessary sacrifice.
The policy argument is that citizens prioritize the safety of their bank accounts and their digital identities over complete individual privacy, especially given the scale of online harm. It's a foundational debate about where the social contract lands in a digital age.
A necessary trade-off for a secure floor. Okay, let's move to the second goal. Growth augmenting the workforce. This is where Singapore aims to maximize economic value creation by using AI to empower people, not just replace them.
The commitment here is massive. We're talking over $1 billion Singapore dollars being invested in AI over the next 5 years. And crucially, this investment is supported by governance frameworks like the Model AI Governance Framework and AI Verify.
AI Verify.
It tests and certifies the ethical and responsible deployment of AI systems. The intent is clear. They want to be a global hub for responsible AI deployment that augments human capabilities.
Augmentation's a nice word, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, we can look at the example of DBS Bank, a major regional player. They've scaled up over 350 AI and machine learning use cases. They're using generative AI to automate routine compliance checks, data entry, preparatory analysis.
The drudgery.
Exactly. This doesn't eliminate the jobs. Instead, it frees the human employees, the relationship managers, the financial strategists to focus on strategic, value-added activities, complex problem solving, and deepening customer relationships. The machine handles the repetitive stuff, freeing the human expert for cognitive relational work. It really supports that narrative that technology can elevate the standard of work.
And finally, the third pillar, community. This goal addresses the critical risk that all this high-tech stability and growth creates an even greater digital divide.
Leaving behind those who are already disadvantaged.
Right.
And despite leading the world in digital inclusion with 99% connectivity, that last mile is always the hardest. The community goal focuses intensively on reaching seniors and low-income households who might have a device but lack the confidence or the training to use it effectively.
So it's not just about access to the hardware, it's about competence.
Exactly. Since 2020, they've subsidized devices and broadband for over 62,000 low-income households. But more critically, they launched the Digital for Life movement.
What's that?
It's an initiative, a coalition across public and private sectors to provide personalized, in-person coaching and workshops on essential digital skills, responsible tech use, and how to combat scams. And these sessions are often held at over 30 community hubs, bringing the training directly to citizens where they live.
And I find their governing philosophy, digital first, not digital only, to be a really powerful indicator of their commitment to true inclusivity.
That phrase is a tacit acknowledgement of failure if they abandon those who are uncomfortable with technology. They recognize that some citizens, especially some seniors, will simply never be comfortable accessing sensitive services online.
So they keep the old ways available?
Therefore, they maintain physical alternatives, like the Service SG centers. These are physical locations where citizens can interact with government services face-to-face. This ensures that the engineered security and convenience of the smart nation are available to everyone, preventing the efficiency drive from becoming an exclusionary force.
So the lesson from Singapore is clear. Stability and human security aren't passive. They're the result of massive, continuous, human-centered governance and technological engineering.
That's right.
It gives people like Zol the predictability they need to thrive. But let's return to the original critique that started our conversation. Does that comfort suppress our moral duty? Does this rising floor of security just numb us to the larger injustices of the world?
This is the core philosophical battleground. And we have to address the powerful rebuttal that challenges this doom-centric techno-pessimism that demands constant vigilance.
Right.
The argument we find is that a society that requires every citizen to be a consequential hero, an activist, or a disruptor is, by definition, a society that's permanently in crisis.
It seems like the fundamental error in the critique is collapsing equal moral worth with equal responsibility or power.
Precisely. The philosophical defense asserts that dignity does not require importance or visibility. A just society ensures people are equally protected and valued. They don't need to be equally consequential. Not everyone is equipped for or even desires the psychological burden of consequential leadership or activism. A humane civilization secures the right to opt out of that constant struggle without shame.
This is a really robust defense of the right to be ordinary, the right to live a quiet life, secured by the technician, the data center, the functioning transit system.
It is the defense of the right to be relatively carefree. The pressure to be a protagonist, which is often amplified by social media narratives, creates a culture of mandatory heroism.
That's a great phrase for it.
The moral claim that comfort produces apathy fails to acknowledge that progress itself, in the real world, often manifests as quiet stability, reliability, and, well, boredom. Not as ethical purity or constant revolution. The functional civilization, though imperfect, is measurable, tangible progress.
And you think of Elias, the young man living in a hyper-connected city. He's scrolling his phone and sees calls to action, urgent political narratives, cultural pressure demanding he be a disruptor. He feels crushed by the expectation that if he simply wants to be a good librarian, a reliable neighbor, and enjoy his quiet weekends, that his life is somehow a moral void.
Elias's guilt is a modern tragedy. We've created a cultural ideal that prioritizes visible, consequential struggle over anonymous contribution. Yet, the librarian who meticulously organizes knowledge and helps citizens access information, that person is a crucial pillar of stability and civilization. We need to affirm that progress is secured by the functional system, which in turn secures Elias's right to pursue his chosen contribution without being coerced into activism.
Okay, now let's pivot the stakes entirely. If, in a well-structured democracy, the ordinary person is fighting for the right to anonymity and comfort, what happens in a system where the government demands performative activism, where the government insists on living within the lie?
This is where the ordinary person, the technician, the greengrocer, assumes profound political power simply by refusing conformity. We have to look at the analysis of the post-totalitarian system, where traditional politics is extinguished and ideological ritual takes its place.
The classic illustration being the greengrocer who displays the official slogan, "Workers of the world unite."
Right. The act is performed not out of conviction. He is often indifferent to its semantic content, but because it's expected. It is a necessary ritual to ensure his peace and tranquility. If he refuses, he risks sanctions. The act of placing that slogan in the window is a silent message to the authorities and his neighbors.
A message of compliance.
The message is, I, the greengrocer, know what is expected of me. I am obedient. I have the right to be left alone.
So the slogan functions not as propaganda, but as a ritualistic confirmation of the system's automatism. It's a shield against state interference.
Precisely. By performing the ritual, he helps sustain the illusion of universal belief. He becomes a willing, if cynical, player in the game. His fear, which is the true foundation of his obedience, is hidden behind this facade of ideology. This is the mechanism of living within the lie.
It's accepting the ritual.
Accepting the ritual confirms, fulfills, and is the system itself. This post-totalitarian system is driven by blind ideological automatism that demands uniformity, which is the total antithesis of the natural human aims of life, plurality, dignity, independent self-constitution.
And the lie is pervasive. The customer doesn't necessarily read the slogan, but they're intensely aware of the vast panorama of mutualistic obedience it represents.
It's the backdrop of daily life.
It reinforces what's expected. Their mutual conformity helps keep everyone else obedient.
They are both objects and subjects of the control system. They're complicit not through action, but through acceptance of the conditions. And this is what makes the moment of revolt so explosive. What happens when the greengrocer simply stops putting up the slogan and steps out of living within the lie to live within the truth?
He rejects the ritual. He breaks the rules of the game, not with a bomb or a political speech, but with a simple act of refusal.
And that act, which seems so non-political like refusing to vote or signing a truthful open letter, is seen as a political threat par excellence. It exposes the emptiness and the fear that the ideological system is built to conceal, and the sanctions are swift and immediate. He'll be relieved of his managerial post, his pay will be cut, his children's access to education will be curtailed.
The system's violent reaction confirms that the refusal to perform a simple, non-political ritual is the most dangerous political act possible. Why does this personal act carry such explosive political power in that system?
Because in that post-totalitarian state, truth operates not on the level of institutional power where the opposition has been crushed, but on the existential level, the level of human consciousness and conscience.
It's pre-political.
Since the political landscape has been emptied of formal rivals, the center of gravity of political threat shifts to the pre-political. Every free, uncoerced expression of life, from a rock concert to a truthful utterance, indirectly threatens the system because it articulates the repressed aims of life, the longing for basic rights, dignity, and just a bearable existence.
That reframes resistance entirely. The primary source of resistance, the independent life of society, it's not a formal political movement.
Yeah.
It emerges from the continuous, thankless struggle of human beings to live more freely, more truthfully, and in quiet dignity, rejecting abstract ideological systems in favor of concrete human needs. The moral legacy of this struggle is immensely powerful, even if it's often anonymous and non-heroic.
The struggle for human rights in this context is not just about legalistic protections. It's a fundamental existential attack on the automatism of the lie. The goal is not just to change the government's face, but to change the basis of human existence itself, to move from coercion to authenticity.
So we've traveled across continents and philosophies, from the necessity of managing automation displacement in Southeast Asia to the engineered security baseline of Singapore, and finally to the political power of the ordinary person, defending either the right to comfort or the right to truth.
And the common thread.
The common thread is that dignity is not a trophy reserved for the exceptional. It's the fundamental right to an uncoerced existence.
That is the perfect synthesis. Stability is the foundation, and it must be built, maintained, and secured by constant human effort, as we saw with the Singaporean policy frameworks. The battle for dignity is waged both in the fight against economic exploitation of the body, as Aranya demonstrated, and in the defense of a quiet, truthful life, as illuminated by the greengrocer's refusal.
So the moral compass points not to the visibility of the protagonist,
but to the authenticity and reliable contribution of the individual.
So the most significant outcome of a successful technological civilization is not reaching some kind of ethical perfection. We'll always fall short of that.
Always.
But it's securing the reliable conditions where the majority can pursue well-being without being forced into a state of perpetual crisis or coerced ideological action. The moral foundation of a durable civilization is the reliability of the baseline, the safety of the floor, and the right to ordinary existence.
Indeed. The success of a civilization should not be measured by the number of heroes it produces, but by how few it requires. The mundane reliability of a system built by millions of unimportant people, the technician who silently fixes the glitch, the writer whose day is made predictable by integrated infrastructure, the librarian who simply wants to be a reliable neighbor, that is not a moral void. It is the moral victory.